You've probably heard that kids need limits. Research findings in neurology actually confirm this, as children are faced with the necessity to rein in the impulse toward something that they want, for instance, to grab a toy from another child, so that they can have something they want more, a close, warm relationship with you. They learn self-control. So our limits actually teach kids to set limits for themselves. This is a method of positive discipline. Now, positive discipline is not the same as permissive parenting, where the child is basically allowed to do whatever he pleases. You are still establishing and enforcing firm limits when necessary, but you're doing so with cool confidence, empathy, and respect for the child. You're not yelling, shaming, doling out punishments and unrelated consequences, and otherwise eroding your relationship. Kids need appropriate limits, but it's how you do it that counts. I'm Marisa from Call to Mothering, and I encourage and equip moms who are raising toddlers to teens. In this video, I'm sharing ways to effectively set and enforce limits without resorting to punishing. Number 1, follow through with realistic, rational consequences. When we think of consequences, we often think of groundings, taking privileges away, spankings, lectures, and other punishments, but these are neither necessary nor effective for teaching positive skills and values. The more natural, realistic to life, and related to the behavior the consequence is, the more effective it is in teaching the desired lesson. When a child makes a mess, the logical consequence of this is that he cleans up after himself. When a child damages something, a natural consequence is that they replace it. A child refusing to do chores postpones their own playtime. When we follow through with realistic and rational consequences and show empathy, we take the focus off of us and allow our child to learn from the consequence. It gives us an opportunity to help our child learn to solve his or her problems rather than causing them to blame us and see us as the problem. Number 2, allow natural consequences. Too often, parents jump in and overshadow the real-life natural consequences of a situation by either giving a harsh punishment or an unnecessary reward, instead of simply letting their children experience the natural outworking of their actions. If a child, for instance, chooses not to complete his homework, poor grades or other consequences at school may follow. If a child refuses to get their shoes on before it's time to leave the house, they get to carry their shoes with them to the car, or they may have to just go without shoes. When they refuse to go to sleep, they get tired. On the other hand, a child feels good when he or she does something kind for a sibling or friend, and they get to move on to playtime when they've completed all of their chores. We all experience consequences in our everyday lives, and we learn from them without any lectures or punishments. It's the same with our children. Number 3, use positive language. Setting limits does mean that sometimes you will have to intervene and stop your child from doing something. For instance, you may have to remove him from the park for throwing sand. But if you do that in anger and as a punishment, he will get stuck in the injustice and also in being angry at you, and the lesson is lost. Instead, say something like, "It was too hard for you to stop throwing sand, but throwing sand hurts people, so we had to leave. Soon you will be able to stop yourself, so we can stay and play. We can try again tomorrow." Your child will probably still be upset that he had to leave, but now he sees you as being on his side, and he's also encouraged that he will do better next time. Number 4, limit behavior, allow feelings. The full range of your child's emotions is allowable, but not all behavior is. It's perfectly natural for her to feel anger and disappointment when you set a limit. It's actually developmentally appropriate for young children. It's how they become independent, and it's a not so silent cry for your understanding as their loving parent. They need to know that you love them and accept them in spite of their behavior. And they also need you to guide them to regulate their emotions. Our job as parents is to accept these feelings and to love our kids through them. The more we do that, the less overwhelming their feelings will be, and the less they'll actually tantrum. But if we can't tolerate their anger and sadness, in other words, we don't allow their feelings, we may feel threatened by them or uncomfortable with their strong emotions, then they learn that part of who they are is unacceptable. And what's more, they feel completely alone. As with any unacknowledged emotion, the anger and sadness don't just vanish. They actually go underground. Our children learn to stuff their feelings down if they know that we are uncomfortable with them and we're not allowing them to express these feelings. So they get pushed way, way down, and actually those feelings over time become magnified. And sometimes they actually sow the seeds of depression. So while limits are an inescapable part of a child's life, if your child perceives you as being unfair or simply not understanding their perspective, she will likely rebel against the standards and the boundaries that you have set. Number 5, respond with empathy to them not liking the limit. It is firm limits accompanied by empathy that allow our children to experience the full range of their reactions to the limits that we've set that they may not like, and come out on the other side. If parents can provide an emotional holding environment while also reinforcing the limit, the child has the freedom to rail against that limit. They have the freedom to cry and grieve about it, and then to finally accept it and move on. Moving on consists of letting go of the path that they were holding on to, the way that they wanted to go, and finding another acceptable one. For example, I can't play with Maggie right now, but maybe I'll see her tomorrow. The child learns that the world is indeed full of obstacles to their desires, but she isn't left fighting that, which is what happens when the limit is not reinforced compassionately. She grieves and then moves on, looking for another way to feel better. And that's a really healthy thing for our kids to be able to do. She also learns that she cannot always get her way, which is a very important lesson in life, but she gets something better, someone who loves and accepts the full range of who she is. Empathy makes your limit more palatable to your child, so she doesn't resist it as much. That's what allows her to internalize it. Number 6, only set the limits you really need to set. It's important that you only set the limits you really need to, so that your child's life is more about connection and discovery than about limits and frustration. Saying no too often actually can undermine your relationship. If your child experiences you as sabotaging his happiness at every turn by creating frustrations or arbitrary or unfair limits, he won't accept your attempts to empathize with him. After all, you have the power to grant his desire, and you are refusing to do so over and over. So, how you decide which limits are really necessary? If you think about it, you already know the answer to this. Safety for himself and others is non-negotiable. Treating others with respect and kindness is important, although always a work in progress. as you teach him that he can advocate for his own needs without attacking anyone else. All other rules will change over time. He will have to learn to clean up his own messes, for instance, and not to interrupt you mid-sentence. But if you're seeing things from his perspective and keeping in mind what's age appropriate, you will know what he's ready to handle. And you will also see what he needs. For instance, a good night's sleep, and you will be prepared to enforce him getting those things. The connection and relationship between parent and child is one of the most important elements of setting good, clear limits, boundaries, and consequences. When we approach a limit with compassion and positive words that convey we understand their feelings, we will find that our kids are much more cooperative. Thank you so much for watching. And remember, you are not just a mom.